Hey, Kurt Angle. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for having me on, my friend.
We are here because we're talking about there's a brand new documentary called Angle, all about your life and career on streaming on Peacock. And I just watched it last night, and one of the greatest movie critic assignments ever to get to relive all the all the great stuff. But yeah, I loved it. And I got to say, there was like a point where there was like this inspirational slow piano music. And I was like, I know that. I know that. That's Kurt's theme. But anyway, yeah. So why was now the right time to do it? Are you sort of at a point in your life where, you can, look back on the good, the demons, everything? You're kind of at a cathartic point now.
Yeah, it was time for me to tell my story, and I thought the director did an incredible job. It was a great documentary put together very well. It's about a kid with a dream, and he had a few mishaps along the way, but he was able to make his dream come true, and he ends up going into a business that he never thought he would do, and that's the WWE. And I had even just as good of a career as I did my amateur wrestling career, but there were a lot of demons that I had to face during that time. But it's a really cool documentary. I'm very proud of it, and I think Alex Perry did a great job.
Absolutely. I'm so glad Alex reached out to set up this interview. And yeah, like you said, that's one thing people will notice if there's WWE fans to sit down to watch it. That you don't get to the WWE until like, maybe an hour or so in. But that, I mean, for maybe other wrestlers, that might be too long. But for your story, it's perfect because you are, the Olympic hero. You and your childhood, you have to set the stage. That's at least half of your story, at least. So yeah, let's go through it a little bit chronologically. Like you dealt with some pretty big blows, the death of your father at a young age in Pittsburgh, and then also the murder of your biggest mentor, Dave Schultz, at the Foxcatcher Ranch when you were training for the Olympics. But like, how do you think, those two tragedies, helped shape, I'm going to do it for them kind of a mindset?
Well, that's exactly what it did. It motivated me to become better. My father was my biggest fan growing up. He never missed any of my sporting events. He worked a lot, and he'd even leave work early to show up to my events. That's how much of a fan he was of mine. And he coached me along the way. And there was a certain point in my career where he couldn't coach me anymore. And that's where my coaches picked up, my Olympic coach and all that. But he was a really cool dad. He didn't really put a lot of pressure on me. He just wanted me to give my best. And he knew when I did give my best, and he knew when I didn't. The only time he would ride me is when I didn't give my best. He didn't care if I won or lost. He just wanted to make sure I gave everything I had.
Yeah.
And my coach Dave Schultz was the same way. Dave was incredible. He learned 7 languages from different countries just so that he could learn the sport of wrestling worldwide from an international standpoint. And he became the best technician in the world. And I learned a lot from Dave Schultz. Not only that, I learned how to be a father and a husband and all that stuff. He was just an incredible human being.
Absolutely. And you can tell that they would both be very proud of where you've come throughout this, and seeing this documentary. I'm sure they're smiling down watching this thing with you. I loved what you sort of said, and this is the part that I was geeking out on. Oh, so like you're sort of like your work ethic, running those hills, carrying the guys through Pittsburgh. I think I've heard somewhere, maybe it's your podcast or something, you said that Rocky's your favorite movie, and it's obvious. I mean, it's sort of that. I mean, I just talked to people about sort of that idea that you get up earlier, you outwork everybody, you had your calendar, your work ethic, and just the idea that you were going to exhaust train. Like your key to winning the Olympics and beating these world-class athletes is, I'm going to maybe not necessarily outskill them, I'm just going to tire them out.
Yeah, get them tired, man. It's the easiest, not the easiest, but it's the most basic strategy that you can have. Yeah. I wasn't the biggest or the fastest or the strongest or the most technical, but what I knew I could do is wear my opponents down and get them tired. And it's crazy because people give up. When they get tired, they say, I'm tired, I can't go anymore. And from a mental standpoint, I knew every time I wrestled, I knew the breaking point of my opponent. Yeah. Once they got tired, I wore them down. I knew I had them. And, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to do. Exhaust training, that's when you train till you're exhausted. Yeah. And that's when it actually begins.
Yeah. So then you go from there.
You go beyond your limitations. Yes. Yeah. And I put myself through hell, but it worked out for me.
Oh, absolutely. Those guys are just gassed on the mat next to you.
Yeah.
It's amazing. One more on the Olympic thing before we get to the WWE. I know that's a lot of our listeners excited to talk about the professional wrestling stuff, but we got to talk about the Olympics too. You famously won with a broken freaking neck.
Yes.
I love the detail that the documentary goes into, with the doctors, the x-rays and the the discs and the vertebrae and all that stuff. But yeah, just do you get goosebumps watching those Olympic footage again, and B, or does the pain, the numbness come back?
You know what? No, I at first I didn't want to watch myself because I knew the turmoil I put myself through, especially with my broken neck and stressing out every day about it, whether or not I was going to be able to wrestle. It really wore on me. So I didn't want to ever look back at that and say, I have bad memories of it. So I never thought about it until I did the documentary, and it made me emotional. I mean, I started breaking down and crying during the documentary because all the hard work I put in and everything I had to do, knowing that not only was I not the best wrestler in the world, but now I have a broken neck. Yeah. And how do I overcome this? Because I couldn't train the last 6 months before the Olympics.
Right.
I had to let my neck rest and heal, and so the exhaust training wasn't really exhaust training anymore.
Right.
But I think I was in enough shape that I was able to, even though the last 6 weeks I couldn't train much, I think that my conditioning carried me through, that I did enough at that point that I was okay. But I never like to look back, and now I do. And now I have good memories because knowing that I went through everything I did, I'm just really proud of it.
Absolutely. And you can see in the movie how much it means to you in the footage too. Like, you're breaking down in tears. You're like, this is crying. This is the best day of my life. Thank you. My mom and your dad up in heaven and Dave Shaw. Like, the tears are just flowing. It's great. But what the movie also does a good job, and this is how we'll pivot into wrestling, professional wrestling. It does a good job of showing. There's a line where you're getting interviewed and you say, well, once you build your whole life trying to achieve this gold medal, and then once you achieve it, you're throwing out first pitches at games, you're doing interviews in the talk circuit, but then you're like, well, wait a minute, what do I do now? And so it's almost as a competitive, son of a gun like you, it's like, well, what's next? So tell me about sort of that phase and how you actually turned Vince McMahon down at first, right? You're like, I don't want to do that.
All right, I'll tell you the whole story. When I got done with the Olympics, listen, that's all I ever dreamed about since I was a kid. That's all I ever wanted to do. And I'm going to be honest with you. If I would have died that night, I would have been happy. I would have been happy.
You said that. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? The next day you wake up, you're like, what do I do now? Like, I was literally clueless. Yeah. I mean, I had a college degree. I had a teaching degree, but I didn't want to be a teacher. I knew that. And I'm thinking, what the heck can I do now to match what I just did?
Did you do some news broadcasts too?
Failed
sports reporting.
For a year. It was horrible. I was so bad. The thing is, it was a startup station, and they didn't have me rehearse. So I just walked in the first night. I'm the weekend sports anchor.
Yeah.
And the first thing that happens is I run in the studio with all of my scripts in my hand, and I run into the producer, and my scripts go all flying in the air and they go out of order. So I get to the desk, and the producer says, just read the teleprompter. And I go to read the teleprompter, and it goes blank.
Are you kidding me?
So I don't have my scripts. I don't have the teleprompter. So now I have to think about what I just, wrote down for, on my script.
Yeah.
And I remember the first thing was Duquesne basketball. And I said, Duquesne basketball had a game today, and let's go to the highlights, because I didn't know what else to say.
Boom goes the dynamite.
So the second segment, I didn't know what it was, and I said, now we're gonna go with football.
Yeah.
And baseball pops up. So, and that happened the whole segment.
Oh, that's great.
Everything I did. The next one I said, okay, football now, and it was hockey.
Oh,
so
it
was the worst experience. And you know what? It didn't get any better.
Yeah.
So it was a nightmare. I knew it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, I got approached by WWE before I did that. And I remember Vince, he offered me a multi-million-dollar contract, and I brought it back to my agent, and he said, "You're not going to do this crap. You're the real deal. They're fake."
Right.
And he throws it in the trash. He's the one that got me the job with Fox,
okay.
the sportscasting job. So I turned that down, the deal with Vince. And a couple years later, in 1998, I started watching the WWE because I never watched before. I knew who wrestlers were, like Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, because they were mainstream, but I didn't really know wrestling, pro wrestling. And I'm watching, and I'm like, man, these guys are good athletes, you know, and these storylines are hilarious.
This is Attitude Era, 98.
Yeah, yeah.
That is Stone Cold versus Vince and The Rock, and yeah, it's awesome. DX.
Best era in wrestling. DX, Stone Cold, all that. Yeah. So I said, so I called the WWE in 1998, and I talked to Jim Ross, and I said, "Hey, is that contract still standing in 1996?" He said, "No, you're going to have to come up and try out." And I figured nothing in my life's ever come easily, so I'll go up and try out. And I went up and tried out. And after the first day, I picked up on everything so quickly, they offered me a contract. It wasn't a very good contract. It was actually $75,000 a year. Yeah. And don't forget, when you're a wrestler, they only pay for your airfare. They don't pay for your hotel, your rental car, your food. So 75,000 doesn't go very far.
Right.
But I knew if I was good that I would make a lot more money.
Right.
And so I did it, and I stuck with it. And eventually my first year, my rookie year, I won the world championship. I beat The Rock for the world title. And a half a year after that, I beat Stone Cold Steve Austin for the world title. I beat the two biggest names in the business my first year and a half in the business.
Oh, yeah.
And I became a big star myself. And then, you know what? The following year, I broke my neck for the second time. And I was introduced to painkillers.
Yeah.
And that was a nightmare.
And before we go off into that, the darker side of the all is lost part of the documentary, before I want to, if you don't mind, hit some of those early highlights. Where man, you're talking about your meteoric rise there in the beginning, like. And you've heard other wrestlers say this to this day. Few people have picked the business up as the ring psychology and all that, like you. What was you, like the Euro Continental Champion? You had that undefeated streak, even though that damn Taz came out and gave that illegal chokehold at the Royal Rumble. Dude, I remember it all. I loved it. But yeah, so you picking that up, but also like, tell me like sort of that idea of your character being sort of the intentionally corny Olympic hero. Like, back in the day, Hulk Hogan's era, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, you would have been the big baby face. But instead,
yes, I would have.
Tell me about Vince sort of telling you do not boo an Olympic hero, turning this all shucks guy and what he convincing you, no, we're in an attitude era now. They're rooting for Stone Cold flipping off the boss. They're going to boo you. Like, take me into that, like him convincing you of that.
Well, he sat me down. He said, "Listen, we're going to make a character. You're going to be the man of the three I's: intensity, integrity, intelligence. Yeah. You're going to drink milk. You're not going to swear. You're going to go by the rules, but really you're not going to go by the rules, but you're going to say you will."
Yeah.
And so he was setting it up, and he was telling me, "You're going to be the biggest heel in the business."
Yeah.
And I said, "Vince, there's no way. I'm an Olympic gold medalist. Everybody's going to love me." He said, "Not after I'm done with you." So I ended up doing this gullible, goofy character, a nerdy character, and it worked extremely well. I mean, I couldn't believe how much the fans hated my guts.
You suck.
And it was just amazing that Vince was right. And he told me that he did this on purpose because he did this with The Rock when he started out. And when Rock started out, he tried to make him a babyface, and the fans were booing him. Right. They were even chanting, "Die, Rocky, die."
Yeah.
And so Vince wanted to use the same imprint, but knowing that I will be a heel instead of a babyface, that it wouldn't backfire, it would actually work to Vince's advantage. So it worked extremely well. And Vince was right. The Attitude Era, you can't be the guy that drinks milk and takes your vitamins. You have to be the guy that drinks beer and flips his boss off. I mean, it was ridiculous how the baby faces were the bad guys, and the good guys were the heels.
Yeah.
So, but it worked. It worked for me. And you know what? I was the most hated guy in the business for my first 3 years.
but it started to flip too, because then Austin turns heel, and then suddenly you're getting to spoof his beer bath with the milk truck bath. That's iconic. Or the Jimmy Crack Corn with the little cowboy hat strumming in there. I got Olympic gold. Yeah, so I think by being the dorky heel for a while, eventually it started to shift. You know, the pendulum swung and everyone fell in love with your dorkiness. And then,
you know what happens is the fans, you prove to them that you're very talented and that you're good at what you do, and the fans start showing appreciation for you. You know, and I have fans to this day that say, "Man, I hated your guts when you started, but I actually loved you a few years later." And it's because you earned their respect. You know, when you come in, you're demanding to be a baby face when they don't know you. They're like, "Who are you?" And what, you know, we're not going to cheer for you. You know, so you have to get their acceptance before they actually make you a baby face. And you know what? It wasn't our idea to turn me babyface. The fans turned me.
Exactly.
Not Vince, not me. The fans did. So that's when Vince said, "Hey, let's go with this, and let's have you go up against Austin, and we'll make some money." And he was absolutely right.
Absolutely. And that sort of leads to that ruthless aggression era. You have the mouthpiece in and you're like a total badass now. You know, I want to hit at least one of those, some of those highlights before the painkiller stuff, because there's so much, like, you know, positive stuff I want to talk about still. So like the badass ring performers. I mean, you're doing these amazing 5-star matches with, you know, Brock Lesnar at Mania with the failed shooting star press thing, Eddie Guerrero, the boot coming off, and Undertaker submission trade off, Shawn Michaels, you know, programs. I'm just a sexy Kurt. I'll make your ankle hurt. And then of course, he who shall not be named, Chris Benoit. I can see why the WWE didn't put him in this documentary, although you will see him roll out during your moonsault off the cage. But it's a shame. Some of your greatest matches were those SmackDown blowouts with that, you know, to say nothing of what happened at the end of it.
They are my favorite matches. They're my best matches.
Yeah. So I mean, so that, are you a little disappointed those don't make it in? But also, I mean, you understand why. But I mean, either way, I want to be positive here. Like the documentary shows some of your greatest opponents ever, man.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Chris Benoit, I think that I wouldn't have minded him being shown on the documentary, because, you know, when you look at it from this perspective and you talk about my legacy, if you don't mention Chris Benoit, my legacy is not nearly as good as it actually is. Like, Chris and I had some incredible matches.
Jericho
we had
says
Iron Man matches. Yeah, we had cage matches. We had incredible wrestling matches, submission trade-off matches. We had the best chemistry together. And those matches made my legacy. But it's unfortunate that, you know, WWE doesn't want to, you know, because of Chris's actions and everything that occurred with him and his family. I understand why they don't want that, you know, being shown. But, you know, you're also taking away my legacy by doing that. And that's because I've had my best matches.
It's one of those things where you're like, I get it, but it's just, it sucks on your career legacy, but you get it. You also get it. So anyway, but is there one opponent that I have one in my mind. Is there one that you wish you could have faced that you never faced? Cause I have mine.
Easy. Bret Hart.
Ah, of course. Of course. Well, there you go. Well, I think your answer is better than mine. I was going to say Ken Shamrock, ankle lock versus ankle lock. But Bret's perfect.
Actually, him and I would have had incredible chemistry.
Yeah,
we come from the same, you know, what would you call that? The same
shoot fighting. What would you call it? I don't know.
Yeah, basically the same, you know, profession. And I think him and I would have had a stellar match.
Yeah.
But somebody today that I would have loved to wrestle would be Kenny Omega.
Oh yeah.
Where it wrestled, but
he's
AEW. Really talented.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Everyone you mentioned is just epic. I mean, I could talk about all the great moments, you winning after 9/11, all that stuff. Family jumping around the ring and all that stuff. Iron Man with Brock Lesnar. I mean, and that was the day after your sister passed too. Man, the documentary goes through so much. And actually, I guess that's a segue into sort of the dark period of your career. You mentioned it earlier in the interview, but let's go into it really quick. And it has a happy ending, folks. So you know, don't get too sad. But tell me about, you know, I don't remember how many neck injuries there were and the painkiller addiction and why that all, you know, he had to leave WWE for TNA. Just that whole dark period.
Sure. 2003, I broke my neck again. My first time was in the Olympics, before the Olympics, and I broke my neck. So I was introduced to painkillers, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I love the way they made me feel. They gave me an energetic feel. They didn't make me feel nauseous like they do a lot of people, but for me, it made me feel stronger. And not only that, but it masked the pain. I couldn't feel the pain in my neck. And so I was introduced to those, and the doctors don't tell you this, but you build a tolerance to painkillers. So one doesn't work after a while. You know, you're supposed to take one every 4 to 6 hours. And after a while, after a couple months, one doesn't work anymore. Then you have to take two. Yeah. Then you have to take four. Four leads to 8. Before I knew it, I was literally taking 65 extra strength bucket in a day. I mean, it was enough to kill a horse. And I was in bad shape. Yeah. And I was hiding it from the company. And, you know, it was really difficult for me, because now it wasn't about the pain anymore. It was about going through withdrawal. So when you're a drug addict, all you worried about is how you're going to get the drug. Right. And I, you know how I did that calendar with my training?
Yeah.
I had a calendar where I would have different doctors, 12 different doctors, because, you know, I needed more than 120 pills a month.
Oh, it's in the movie. It's in the documentary. They show, and that's a cool bookend with the training regimen and then the pill regimen. And I got to get this 1500s from my shipment in Mexico or whatever. Like, you were as obsessed with getting the pills as you were with training, and it's really sad. But yeah, that's the obsession.
My training was my first priority back then.
Yeah.
And now my first priority was getting the drug.
Right.
So I was going to 12 different doctors to fill 12 different scripts. I had to find 12 different pharmacies, because you can't get scripts at the same pharmacy, because they're going to know. So, and then I was buying them illegally, 500 of them a month illegally from Mexico. So every day, all I was worried about is how I'm going to get this, and, you know, what I have to do to make sure I have enough. Yeah. And it just really wore on me. And there were times where I was passing out during the day, and it just got really ugly for me. And the WWE wanted me to go to rehab. And, you know, me being an addict, I didn't want to go. So I made the choice of leaving the WWE in 2006. And I did get my painkiller problem under control. What a doctor did is he wanted me to get off of all that stuff and get on morphine, which is a more powerful drug. But he was going to give me 2 little pills a day that would help me not go through withdrawal. So I wasn't taking 65 anymore. I was just taking 2. But the problem was I went to Impact Wrestling, and everybody there drank. So now I'm drinking alcohol, and I'm mixing it with the morphine.
Oh, chasing it with beer.
Oh, and you know what? It just got worse. I mean, my decision making became really sloppy. Like I was literally driving from town to town to do my shows, and drinking a 12-pack of beer while I was driving. And it got me. I had horrible decisions. Yeah. And I literally got 4 DUIs in 5 years. My life spun out of control. I lost my reputation. Everything I worked for, I was at the lowest point in my life. And I remember, after that, I just, I didn't know what to do. And I ended up, going to rehab. What happened was I got arrested with my 4th DUI, and my wife, I called her from jail. She said, I can't do this anymore. You either go to rehab or I'm taking the kids and I'm leaving. Yeah. I don't want to lose my wife and my kids. So I went to rehab.
Yeah.
But I still didn't think I was going to go off the pills. I thought I'd go to rehab, trick her and, into staying. But when I got into rehab, I realized, okay, I'm clean now. I went through a withdrawal for a week, and it was the most painful thing I've ever done. And what that did is that warned me that I will never take another pill again, because I didn't want to feel that kind of pain ever again.
When you describe it in the movie, you genuinely seem, it's a beautiful description. You're like, my insides hurt, I'm whatever, but like, you seem literally scared crapless about ever having withdrawal again.
I'm terrified of those. Yeah. I don't ever want to have that feeling again.
Good. That's a good driving force. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I was worried about in rehab, though, is what if I screw up? Now I'm like being nervous. Like, I don't want to leave rehab. I want to stay there because I'm safe.
Right.
And I think a lot of people get that way. And now I'm like, what if I screw up when I get out? Now I'm worried about that. But I got out and I took it one day at a time, and little by little, it became easier and easier. And after a year, it became a lot easier. And after 2 years, even easier than that. Now I don't even think about it. When I get stressed out, I don't think, man, I could take a pill or drink. I just deal with it. And so going to rehab that one time really helped me. It saved my life.
How many years clean sober are you now?
12 and a half to be exact.
Congrats, my friend. That's amazing. Yeah, and shout out real quick. Shout out to, your wife and your kids, and being a better husband, better father. Like, let's end on a because opioid. That's where this documentary. That's where it transcends Olympic wrestling, where it transcends WWE wrestling into the opioid epidemic that a lot of even Jim Ross says this isn't just a wrestling problem. This is
right.
An overall problem.
It's a people problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just talk about shout out the family support system and a line of hope for maybe other families that are going through this. So many are.
Yeah, there are a lot of people going through it. What I can tell them is you can go get help. You cannot do this on your own. I tried to do it on my own. It didn't work. You have to seek help. You have to have professionals. You have to get your family involved. They have to be involved every step of the way, because when you get out and you start sneaking around behind their back and you're doing stuff that you're not supposed to be doing, that's going to ruin your family. So, you need them to be as involved as they can. I'll tell you this. I had knee surgery a year after I went to rehab. And I told my wife, I need painkillers. She said, you're not taking any of them. I said, what's wrong with taking one? Why can't I just take one? She's like, you're not touching anything.
Slippery
and she
slope.
Was right.
Yep.
Because it would have put me back to where I was.
Yep.
And my wife was smart enough to know that. God bless her.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Well, in the end, sort of bringing this thing full circle, the doc does have a happy ending, Hall of Fame speech, shouting out your wife in the crowd. And, you sort of say in there, it's sort of like a capsule message where you say, I don't want to be remembered for the mistakes I made. I want to be remember Kurt Angle for the accomplishments that you had.
Yeah.
Was that sort of, just to put a bow on this, is that sort of the driving force of what you want people to take away from watching this?
Yeah, but I also, I know that people are going to remember the mistakes I made, but I just hope that they learn from that and they don't fall into the same trap I fell into. Yeah. And, I think people are more aware of what painkillers can do to you today than they were yesterday, but it's still a big problem. And it's something that we all need to work together and try to figure this out. I don't know if you don't want to make it illegal, because there are people that really need it, especially people on their deathbeds, people going through a lot of pain with cancer and stuff like that. But I think there's a limitation of where it should go. I don't think it, once a doctor can prescribe you pills because you fell on your knee and you have a little bruise, that's probably not the right thing. Not the right way to go.
Yeah. Well, I think you joined us a couple years ago with Angle Strong app. Is that still a thing? You still doing that?
No. The doctor, it went under, unfortunately. It really didn't pick up. I think it's because he wanted people to buy the app.
Okay.
So, it wasn't for free. I think if we would have found sponsors and, something like that, I think it would have worked out a little bit better. But, he wanted people to pay, $5 a month for the app. Yeah.
Well, you're helping people with this documentary. You're helping them with the podcast with Paul Bromwell, sharing your stories, just, raising awareness, and the chicken snacks too, right? The Angle.
Yeah. I got my chicken snacks, my healthy snacks. Go to physicallyfit.com to order yours.
Trying to do the Mick Foley cheap plug for you.
Thank you.
But I mean, in the end, to final seconds, I truly believe you are arguably the GOAT to do it. I mean, I know I've heard you say, you have to be in the company for a certain period. Cena, Roman's on a great run now. There's Ric Flair, Stone Cold, The Rock, all your idols, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker. So I know you put longevity. You mentioned Brett, but I know you value longevity in the GOAT conversations. But if we're just judging of, at your peak of who was the best in the ring, Austin says it in the movie. Rock and Austin do sit down for interviews, and Mark Henry and Flair, but they all will say you, Kurt Angle, at your prime was as good, if not better than anyone. So I agree. Bravo.
Thank you. You know what? All you're going to do is stroke my ego right now. And my wife will not appreciate that, because I'll come home and I'll say, hey, he just said that I was the best ever.
Some guy, Jason in
Say,
DC, who
"Shut
said
up."
I'm the best. But no, it's a really great movie, and we want everyone to check it out. It's called Angle. It's on Peacock, streaming now. And thank you so much for taking time to join us in your car. I don't know where you are, but I appreciate taking time.
I just got done with the doctor appointment, so I had to call you because I didn't want to be late.
Oh, it's great. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, and it's so good to with all some wrestler stories, Dark Side of the Ring, you know, there's sad tales. The Rock says it in there. There's that,
Yeah.
but this is a happy ending. I love it. Keep it going. We're just so happy that you're in a good place, and we're so happy for you.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks for having me on too.
Oh, absolutely. It's true. It's damn true.
All right, man. Take care of yourself.